In the markets of ancient China, more than 2,000 years ago, a wealthy merchant looked at a man almost everyone else had written off and saw the deal of a lifetime. The man was a minor prince, one of many grandsons of a king, sent away to a rival state as a political hostage. He was disregarded, far from the throne, with little money and almost no prospects. To the world, he was nobody. But the merchant, a trader who had grown rich buying low and selling high, looked at this forgotten prince and asked himself a question no one else had thought to ask. What would it be worth to make this man a king? He went home and, according to the histories, asked his father how much profit there was in farming, in trading jewels, and in establishing a ruler. The answers grew from modest to large to incalculable. So the merchant made his decision. He would spend his entire fortune turning a disregarded hostage into the king of one of the most powerful states in China. His name was Lu Buwei, and he was about to treat a future emperor as a business venture. Lu Buwei, the merchant who bought a future emperor. To understand the boldness of what Lu Buwei did, you have to understand the world he lived in. This was the age of the warring states, when China was not one country, but a patchwork of rival kingdoms, locked in constant war, diplomacy, and intrigue. Among them, the state of Qin was rising, hard, disciplined, and ambitious, edging toward the power that would one day swallow all the others. But that future was not yet written. Lu Buwei was not born into any of this power. He was a merchant.
Despite the silks and silver they gathered, merchants occupied the lowest rung of the official hierarchy. Beneath the scholars who governed thought and the farmers who fed the empire, the merchant was viewed with suspicion. Wealth could buy comfort, but it could not buy status. A system built on tradition valued the land over the ledger, keeping those who traded in the shadows of the elite. A class of quiet power, waiting for a new era to recognize their worth.
Yet Lu Buwei had mastered his trade, buying goods where they were cheap and selling them where they were dear, building a great fortune through patience and shrewd judgment. He had the one thing that, in a fractured and desperate age, could move the world: money. What set him apart was not just his wealth, but his eye. Lu Buwei saw an undervalued asset where others saw nothing. He understood something the greatest investors in history have always understood. The largest profits come not from buying what is already valuable, but from seeing hidden value that everyone else has missed and acting on it boldly before anyone else catches on. And the hidden value he spotted was a man. The disregarded prince was named Zichu, and his situation was bleak. He was a son of the crown prince of Qin, but only a minor one, born to a concubine who had lost favor. With many rivals ahead of him, he had been sent off to the rival state of Zhao as a hostage, a living guarantee of a treaty, where he lived in genteel poverty, neglected and far from home. He was, in every practical sense, a dead end. But Lu Buwei did the math differently. He saw a chain of possibilities that, if each link could be forged, would lead to an almost unimaginable payoff. So he committed his fortune to a daring, multi-step plan. First, he befriended Zichu and lavished money on him.
The raw material was unpromising. A ragged appearance, a weary posture, the residue of confinement. But under the rough surface, the foundation of a leader remained. The transformation begins not with silk or gold, but with the realignment of the spirit. Each garment is a step toward his true identity. Each tailored line restores the history of his lineage. The hostage is gone. In his place stands a man forged in silver and resolve, a prince redefined by the very hands that sought to break him.
Then came the masterstroke. The crown prince of Qin had a beloved chief wife, Lady Huayang, who had no son of her own. Whoever she adopted as heir would one day inherit the throne. Lu Buwei spent lavishly on rare gifts and traveled to work his influence. Through intermediaries and clever argument, to persuade her to adopt the obscure, faraway Zichu as her own son and designated heir. It was an audacious gambit, using wealth to rewrite the line of succession of a great kingdom. And, astonishingly, it worked. Zichu, the forgotten hostage, was suddenly the adopted heir to the throne of Qin. Lu Buwei had taken his undervalued asset and, through the shrewd deployment of capital, multiplied its worth beyond measure. Then events unfolded with remarkable speed, each once multiplying the value of Lu Buwei's investment. The old king of Qin died. The crown prince took the throne, but reigned only briefly before dying himself. And so, in a stunning reversal of fortune, Zichu, the once disregarded hostage whom nobody had valued, ascended to become the king of Qin, one of the most powerful rulers in all of China. And the man who had made it all happen, the merchant who had spotted the opportunity and spent his fortune to seize it, was rewarded beyond any ordinary dream. Liu Buwei was made Chancellor of Qin, the highest official in the state. Effectively running the government of the most formidable kingdom of the age, he was granted a noble title and an enormous domain. With the taxes of tens of thousands of households flowing to him, he was given a fortune that dwarfed even the wealth he had started with. The merchant, a member of the supposedly low class of traders, now stood at the very pinnacle of power. The right hand of a king he himself had created, his investment had returned the ultimate dividend. Not just money, but supreme political power. He had asked his father how much profit there was in establishing a ruler. And the answer had been incalculable. Now he was living that answer, governing an empire in waiting. His original gamble vindicated beyond anything he could have promised himself in the marketplace where the idea was born. As chancellor, Lu Buwei did not merely enjoy his wealth, he governed, and he governed ambitiously. Leaving a mark on Qin that went far beyond his own fortune, he guided the powerful state through a critical period, managing its affairs and its conquests as it continued its relentless march toward dominating all of China. But Lu Buwei wanted more than political power. He wanted to be remembered as a man of culture and wisdom, not just a merchant who had bought his way to the top. So he used his immense resources to become one of history's great patrons of learning. He gathered thousands of scholars and supported them lavishly, and he commissioned the creation of a vast encyclopedic work.
Observe the architecture of a singular thought. Before the ink touches the parchment, before the silicon retains the pulse, there is a moment of pure geometry. Plato saw shadows, Aristotle measured the stone, yet the root of the inquiry remains identical: to understand the frame. A compendium of knowledge is not a library of facts, but a bridge between competing schools. The scientist and the mystic, the logician and the poet, all standing at the edge of the same void. One names the stars, the other hears their song. Both are necessary for the map to be complete. And so, we arrive at the threshold of synthesis. To know everything worth knowing is to under spaces between the thoughts. A compendium meant not to end the questioning, but to formalize the curiosity. The archive is open. The world is waiting.
According to a famous story, he was so proud of this monumental book that he had it displayed in the marketplace of the capital, with a fortune in gold offered to anyone who could improve it by so much as a single word. No one dared. It was a stunning display of confidence and wealth, a merchant using his money to purchase intellectual immortality. For a time, Lu Buwei stood at the absolute height of power and prestige. He had a king he had made, a great office, a colossal fortune, and a monument of learning bearing his name. But power built on the manipulation of kings is dangerous. And the young heir growing up in the palace would change everything. For that heir was a boy who would become the most powerful man in Chinese history. The boy who would undo Lu Buwei was the son of the merchant king he had made, a young prince who eventually came to the throne himself as the king of Qin, and who would one day unify all of China and declare himself its first emperor. As long as this king was young, Lu Buwei remained powerful, continuing to dominate the government. But the young ruler grew into a man of fierce will and absolute ambition. determined to hold all power in his own hands and to tolerate no rival. No overmighty subject, however great his past services, Lu Buwei, the kingmaker, became the king threatened. His enormous power and his deep entanglement with the royal family, including old connections that had become politically dangerous, made him a liability and a target. A scandal erupted within the palace that implicated those close to Lu Buwei. And the consequences were severe. The young king moved against the very man who had placed his father, and therefore his entire line upon the throne. Lu Buwei was stripped of his office as chancellor and sent away from the capital in disgrace. For a time, he lived in a kind of internal exile, but the king's suspicion did not fade. Fearing that he would be punished even more harshly, or perhaps executed, and seeing that his fall was complete and irreversible, Lu Buwei took his own life by drinking poison. The greatest investor in history, the merchant who had turned a disregarded hostage into a king, was destroyed by the very dynasty he had created. His incalculable profit had come, in the end, at the ultimate cost. So what can a modern builder, an entrepreneur, or an investor take from the story of Lu Buwei? First, he embodied the purest principle of great investing. Find the asset that the market has wildly undervalued. Understand why it is actually worth far more than people think, and commit boldly before the rest of the world catches on. Everyone else saw a worthless hostage. Lu Buwei saw a future king. The ability to perceive hidden potential where others see nothing is the rarest skill in business. Second, he understood leverage in its deepest sense. He used his capital not to buy goods, but to move people and institutions. A modest fortune, deployed with imagination at the right pressure point, can move forces vastly larger than itself. A relatively modest fortune, applied to the line of succession of a great state, yielded power over millions. Third, and most soberingly, his story is a lesson in the dangers of building your fortune on a foundation you cannot ultimately control. Lu Buwei's wealth and power depended entirely on his relationship with the rulers he had made. And that power destroyed him. The lesson echoes through history. Those who make kings are often undone by the kings they make. His investment paid the highest dividend imaginable, supreme power, and then exacted the highest price. He played the boldest game in the history of commerce, and for a time, he won everything. Though Lu Buwei fell, the consequences of his great investment echoed through history in ways even he could never have imagined. The dynasty he had placed on the throne of Qin went on to achieve what no power had done before. The young king he had served, the son of the prince he had made, conquered all the rival states one by one and unified China for the first time in its history. Declaring himself the first emperor, the unified Chinese civilization that followed, with its shared writing, its centralized administration, and its enduring sense of itself as a single realm, traces its origins to the triumph of Qin. And the triumph of Qin traces back, in part, to a merchant in a marketplace who decided to invest his fortune in a forgotten prince. It is one of history's most staggering chains of cause and effect. A trader's eye for undervalued assets, applied to a human being, helped set in motion the creation of one of the world's great civilizations. There is a profound irony in it. Lu Buwei, a merchant whose class was officially despised, may have done more to shape the future of China than almost any general or noble of his age. His name is remembered not only for his wealth and his spectacular rise and fall, but for the encyclopedic book he commissioned, which survives to this day as a window into the thought of ancient China. The merchant who tried to buy intellectual immortality achieved a different kind of immortality entirely. He became the investor whose single audacious bet helped give birth to an empire. Historians still debate the details of Lu Buwei's life, separating fact from the legends that grew around so dramatic a figure. But the core of his story is unmistakable and unmatched in the annals of business. A merchant looked at a man the whole world had dismissed and saw a king. He spent his fortune to make that vision real, rose to govern the mightiest state of his age, and helped set in motion the unification of China itself before being destroyed by the very dynasty he created. His fortune is scattered, his office long abolished, his story 2,000 years old. But Lu Buwei endures as the boldest investor who ever lived. The man who understood that the greatest profits lie in the value no one else can see, and who proved at the price of his own life that to make a king is to gamble everything. From a single merchant who bought a throne, we turn next to an entire industry of profit-seekers who turned the business of government itself into a marketplace. In ancient Rome, private companies competed to collect the taxes of provinces, traded shares among investors, and built the world's first stock market and its first great corporate scandals. Subscribe to Empire Builders and join us next time for the story of the companies that ran Rome's taxes for profit, the Publicani.